There is a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. If you block it, it will never exist through any other medium. It will be lost. The world will not have it. Martha Graham. Welcome back to Creativity and Health. This is our third lesson. And if you felt a little pressure after hearing that quote, don't worry. You have a unique creative gift that makes you different from everybody else, and it's not that hard to find it. And that's what we're going to be talking about this week. And I like to talk about it in terms of boosting your superpowers. So when we think of superpowers, we usually think of somebody like Superman, who can fly, for example, or Wonder Woman, who had those bracelets that she could, bullets would bounce off of them. But it turns out that we all have superpowers, or we all have a power. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Taoism before. It came out of the 5th and 4th centuries. Some Chinese philosophers put together some ideas of how they thought life went, the way of life. And one famous philosopher is Lao Tse. And they came up with something called the principle of Pu. Translated, it means the uncarved block. And what that means is when things and people retain their original simplicity, they are powerful. When you try to change yourself to be somebody you're not, to mold yourself, to fit in to something that, society or your family or school, you're actually cutting your power. When you decide, and it's not always the easiest decision, but when you make the decision to be your true self, you come into your full power. So remember last time we were talking about Bill, the journalist, and how he didn't think he was an artist. He had the role of non-artist because his brother was the artist in the family. Well, when he finally embraced the fact that he too was an artist, just a different kind of artist, he not only started to write fiction, he also started to take photography and is now a wonderful photographer. So it's all about removing those false labels, false roles, and getting down to who you really are. So why do I call this a secret? Finding out what you're naturally good at. All of us are naturally good at something. Why is that a secret? Because we take it for granted that we have this ability or abilities, and we just assume everybody else can do it too. I can't tell you how many people I have taught in workshops over the years that didn't even know they were able to do something until we did some of the exercises that we're going to do today. So, because you think everybody can do it, it's not special, and it's nothing special about you, you don't see it when it's right in front of your eyes. And I would like to tell you a story about myself, actually, and how I realized that I had an ability that I didn't know I had. So, as I mentioned before, I went to Princeton, and I was going there to get my PhD in psychology. And I remember one day, one of our fellow graduate students was giving a talk on music perception. And all of the professors were there, the dean of the school was there. And I started to worry for my friend as she was giving this presentation because I thought that she was kind of failing at it, to tell you the truth, because she was giving examples. So she would play 2 different melodies, and we had to write down whether we thought they were the same or different. And I'm listening to these melodies, and to me, this is what they sound like. Different. Same. I mean, it was so easy. I was worried for her because it's a very competitive program, and you didn't want to mess up ever. Well, at the end of her presentation, she had us sort of add up our scores and go around the room and tell each other how we did. And I ended up outscoring every single person in the room, including the dean who had taken 10 years of violin lessons. So that's when I began to wake up to the fact that I had musical ability. I didn't know that before. So here I was going to Princeton, getting a PhD in psychology, and just then finding out that I really was a good musician. Remember last time we talked about the concept of the shadow, Carl Jung, and how we put parts of ourselves into a bag and we drag it along, really long bag over time. Well, one of my favorite concepts that Carl Jung talks about that a lot of people have not heard of, so this is kind of a secret too, is the concept of the golden shadow. So remember, we're putting things into this bag because our families don't value it, or school doesn't value it, or the culture doesn't value it. But the truth is, some of those things are nuggets of gold, and in a different context would be highly valued. So for me, when I was growing up, when I was 4 years old, whenever my family would take us to visit friends and there would be a piano set up, I would play it as if I was classically trained. And nobody noticed. Nobody in my family ever noticed that. And I begged for a piano for years, and nobody ever got me one, because in my family, and again, it's not that they were, bad, or they just couldn't see it. It wasn't part of who they thought they were. So I was never recognized for being a musician or having musical gifts. That's because it was a golden shadow. So a lot of you out there listening to this right now have a golden shadow, maybe more than one, and I want to help you find it. So what I would like you to do in your next writing assignment, remember last time I asked you to write about what friends ask you for advice about? Do you remember? Did you do it? Okay, I hope you did, because I'd really like to see what you wrote, and I'd really like to be able to comment on it and help you fine-tune your answers as we continue these writing assignments. So this time's writing assignment is, what are you naturally good at? What are you naturally good at? And you might say to yourself, well, it took you until graduate school at Princeton to figure it out. How am I going to do it in 1 week? Well, remember those 6 guidelines that we talked about last time? Use those again when you're writing your answer. But I want to share a story with you that I think you'll appreciate. Maybe you think that you're not naturally good at anything. A lot of people come to my workshops thinking that they're not good at anything. You are. I promise that you are. Once there was a woman, her name is Emmy, and I was coaching her. And she was a measly housewife who wasn't good at anything. And I had a few sessions with her, and I wasn't really getting through to her that you do have something special about you. And I was looking at her one day, and I realized she dressed so well. She looked so good every time I saw her. And so I said to her, Emmy, you're a fantastic dresser. And she goes, anyone can shop. And it was funny because I remember the outfit I was wearing that day. I was wearing a purple and green horizontally striped t-shirt that came down to my knees and was really baggy, and it looked hideous. And after she had said that to me, we both kind of looked at me and burst out laughing, because it's like, no, not everybody can shop. I'm not good at this. So not only did I keep coaching her, but that I asked her to help me. I was just then becoming a musician, right? It took me all this time to figure out that I really wanted to be a rock and roll star when I grew up. So when my first CD came out, I asked her to pick out the clothes for me to wear. And that gave her some self-confidence. And eventually she got a part-time job in a children's clothing store. And by the end of a year, she was a buyer for the store. So if you don't believe that you're good at something, you are. You are naturally good at something. But just like with Emmy, you're probably taking it for granted. And all you need to do is compare yourself to somebody else in your mind, like me with the baggy green and purple shirt, and you'll find it. It will start to emerge. So I would really like you to do that exercise. So I look forward to seeing what you think your unique creative gift or gifts are, and write down everything, even if it seems stupid, write it all down, because somewhere in there, there's that nugget of gold that we were talking about, your golden shadow. Now, if you took a look at the activities for last time, you'll see that hopefully you were supposed to read a chapter on meditation. And I would like to just take a little bit of time to talk to you about This new kind of meditation is probably new to you. It's not new to me, but it's probably new to you. It's called passage meditation. So it's different from the kind of meditation where you maybe focus on your breath. Instead, you actually memorize a passage. You commit it to memory. And usually it's, he gives an example of a passage, the prayer of St. Francis, which may work for you. If not, there's a whole nother book called God Makes the Rivers to Flow by Eknath Easwaran, where you can pick different passages that may work for you better. But really, it's any positive passage. So you commit the whole thing to memory. And then what he recommends, I know this is going to sound hard, but every morning, 7 days a week, you're supposed to sit down with your back straight, close your eyes, and simply repeat the passage to yourself over and over and over again. Now, this is the first time I was ever able to successfully meditate. I never was able to do it just counting my breath. My mind would just, I don't know about you, but it would just go away. What's nice about passage meditation is that you know when your mind has gone away because you notice that you stopped saying the passage to yourself. So if you haven't been off of it for too long, the idea is that you go right back to where you left off. If you find that you've been off for a little while, then you go back to the beginning of the passage. So there's nothing wrong with that if you have to do that a number of times in that half an hour. So here's the thing I wanted to tell you that a lot of people don't realize about passage meditation, but one of the reasons why I think it's so cool, because I used to teach physiological psychology, and I know a lot about how the brain works, and I'll just sort of keep it simple here, but basically, you know when you worry about something, you ruminate, and you can't get that thought out of your mind, and it just keeps going over and over again. It's like there's a neural loop in your brain, or neurons that are used to firing together. So what happens when you do actually any type of meditation is that you interfere with that neural loop, right? So you sit down and say you're worrying about, I don't know, your debt, you have a lot of debt or something, and you start to say the passage, and then your mind goes off to the debt, but then you have to bring it back to the passage, off to the debt, back to the passage, off to the debt, back to the passage. And after a while, those neurons that are used to firing together, they start to weaken, and eventually they stop firing together. So you can actually get rid of worrying habits. But the other beautiful thing about passage meditation that makes it different from other kinds of meditation is because you have committed a positive passage to memory, you're starting up a whole nother neural loop that's got, so for example, the prayer of St. Francis has a lot of passages within the passage about forgiveness, and it affects you after the 30 minutes in the morning. You find yourself walking out into the world and being a more forgiving person because you've actually started a whole new neural loop, for example, around forgiveness. So not only are you getting old worried habits to sort of die off in your brain, but you're implanting new, good, positive thoughts. So I really want you to give it a whack. I know it's hard, 7 days a week, just try. And I know half an hour, right? And everybody wants to not do it half an hour, and everybody's like, oh, maybe 15 minutes or 20. If that's all you can do, good. It's better to do it than not, but I just want to share one thing. For having been a passage meditator for many years, I can tell you something really interesting happens around 20 minutes. You're saying it to yourself and you're like, yeah, I'm repeating this. And all of a sudden it just goes deep. Your eyes, you can feel them moving around, and you just take it real, real deep. So if you have to push yourself to get that extra 5 minutes in, I really suggest that you do it. So last week there was visualization. This week there's passage meditation. So those are 2 tools now. Either one of them helps with health and positive thinking. You don't even have to do both of them. You can make your choice, but try them both and see which one speaks to you more. And the last thing I wanted to ask you is, how did that creative project go? Because remember, you were supposed to work on something, maybe writing or maybe painting. Did it go okay? Were you able to do it? Was it bumpy? Was it smooth? I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about that as well when we get on the forum together, because I can give you feedback about maybe how to do it even better or how to help you get it to flow better. But one thing I wanted to ask you to do, no matter what you did last time, do that same thing one more time before you give up. And when we get together, again, I'll tell you why. So next time we get together, we're going to talk about the third secret to creativity and health, which is the wisdom of being willing to experiment and fail. It's actually a good thing. See you next time.